Maui Nui is on a mission to help balance axis deer populations for the good of our environment, communities, and food systems on the island of Maui. They've shared over 126,000 pounds of nutrient-dense protein with the Maui community. Secure your spot now. Become a snack subscriber and join in helping to build more resilient food and ecosystems on Maui. Visit MauiNuiVenison.com. That's MAUI venison.com and use promo code BEAR for 20% off your first order. You know what my favorite text is? A waypoint in the onX Hunt app to a goblin turkey. The list on the onX Hunt app features for chasing turkeys is long, but knowing exact public and private boundaries and land ownership details will help you find more places to hunt, whether that's on public or private. I'll be toting the Hunt app through the spring woods in a few states this year, and I recommend you do the same if you want more turkeys on your table. Also, onX has a special offer for you. Use code BEARGREASE to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt this spring. Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. Simply pour a can in your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. Pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more. My name is Clay Newcomb, and this is a production of the Bear Grease podcast called the Bear Grease Render, where we render down, dive deeper, and look behind the scenes of the actual Bear Grease podcast. Presented by FHF Gear, American-made, purpose-built hunting and fishing gear that's designed to be as rugged as the places we explore. Welcome to the Bear Grease Render, everybody. I'm going to open this up with a little song. I don't think I've ever sang this song on the Bear Grease Render at all. This is called Ballad of a Backwoodsman. Josh, this is the first song. This is the song I opened up with on the
Will
tour.
this be your first single off the album?
Probably so.
Okay.
But it's about, this is what I would say, Misty, on the live tour. I'd say, welcome, everybody. My name is Clay Newcomb. I'm going to sing you a little song that I wrote called Ballad of a Backwoodsman. And then they put up a real cool picture of James Lawrence. And I'd say, this song's about this man right here from Polk County, Arkansas. And it goes something like this. Born in the Ouachitas of Arkansas, he loved his mama and he loved his paw. Raised by his grandma in the shade of the tree. On the banks of the Cossatot, he was free. She taught him how to hunt and how to shock pouch a deer. That's an Indian trick in case you didn't hear. Carry a buck on your back, tie his legs in a knot so he could get in there deep and hunt his Richwood spot. James Lawrence is a backwoods man. Made a living with his own two hands. Didn't work for the man. Like a whitetail buck, he knows the land. Humble and earnest, I can tell you, I know James firsthand. Second verse. By the sawdust pile, he would camp, use a saddle for a pillow, keep his head from getting damp. On the ridge tops and gaps, he would slip along. When he'd find a buck scrape, he'd be there before dawn. He'd hunt 3 full days in the same spot. He says you'll kill that buck if the sign is hot. When a big old stag would come a-slipping along, his 308 would sing its song. Boom! James Lawrence is a backwoods man. James Lawrence is a backwoods man. Made a living with his own two hands. Didn't work for the man. Like a whitetail buck, he loved the land. Humble and earnest, I can tell you, I know him firsthand. Last verse. What's the last verse start like? Oh man, I'm messing this up so bad. I've rarely met a man as genuine. He stands as tall and strong as a longleaf pine, but them bucking horses and motorcycle wrecks about did him in and broke his neck. Young he once was, but now he's old. Still got fire in his bones like times of old. And when you need a friend to be by your side, and if you kill a bear, it helps you skin the hide. James Lawrence is a backwoods man. Made a living with his own 2 hands. Didn't work for the man. Like a white-tailed buck, he loves the land. Humble and earnest, I can tell you, I know him firsthand. Woo! Ow! I feel like a guy who spent decades on the road singing, and he's kind of reliving it like the glory days. You know?
Yeah.
Kind of reliving the glory days of being on the road, the fans, the people.
Yeah.
But in your situation, you spent 10 days on the road.
You remember that the Jay-Z song about New York City?
Yeah.
When he says, rap stars, NBA players, addicted to the limelight.
Yeah.
That's basically Clay.
You got there.
I felt it. I felt it.
That was Clay's low point.
That was Clay's.
Makes me think of a rap
high
song.
point of his life was playing music for 10 days.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun.
That's a fancy guitar you got there.
Yeah, this guitar,
It's
this is
special,
not my
actually.
guitar. Bear Newcomb graduated high school this week.
Yep.
And his buddies went together and bought him this guitar.
Oh, man.
Isn't that
what
so
a,
sweet?
Sounds
what
good.
a
Did you know
cool
that?
thing.
Yeah.
It was like really.
Did not know that.
There's not a lot of teenagers or 20-year-olds, because it was a range of
Yeah.
ages, who would do that. It really, I thought that was the sweetest.
That's pretty thoughtful.
Friend gift I'd ever seen. A bunch of them went in together on it.
Yeah, I thought it was really nice. And it's better than the guitar that I have.
Oh yeah, it's
So-
way better, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
He's going to see a lot of campfires.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got Josh Lambridge, Spillmaker, here with me.
Hello, everybody.
We've got Colby Moorhead from
Hello,
Bear Hunting
hello, hello.
Magazine. Good to see you, Colby.
Good to be here.
And we've got Dr. Misty Newcomb. The crew is light, man. Brent Reeves is in Canada. We were guess where Gary Newcomb's at?
Where is he?
Alaska.
What?
Oh, are you serious?
Gary and Juju are in Alaska.
Like probably on a whim or something. They're just like,
No,
hey, let's go to
no,
Alaska.
they planned it. This is Juju's first time to fly.
Ooh.
Oh, like ever?
Juju Newcomb's first time to ever be on an airplane, and she was
Wow.
a nervous wreck.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
And she may listen to this. So
Oh, she probably will. Love you, Juju. Hope everything went well.
Hope you made it.
She
Yeah, I
did
hope you made it.
Yeah, we got a text one day, and they were like, saw bears, saw this, saw that, and I just thought, Juju, looking at bears in Alaska.
They're doing like the classic Alaskan tourist thing, which
Yeah.
is cool. They were on a boat for several days.
It's like a cruise.
It's a cruise, but they got off the cruise, and Dad told me they went to a guy that had sled dogs,
Ooh.
and he had run the Iditarod, and this guy
Oh, man.
kind of gave him all these people a little spiel about his dogs and the Iditarod, and they got on a train and went through somewhere on a couple-hour train ride. They've been to Fairbanks, they've been to Anchorage, they've been all over.
Pretty fun.
Yeah, they've never
That
been
sounds pretty epic.
up there before. Yeah,
Sounds cool.
yeah.
I wonder if any of those sled dogs are half German Shepherd.
I don't know. Are they supposed to be?
I don't know.
Just a random
Is
thought
that just a
from
thought
Colby?
that trickled past your mind?
No, that's what the guy in the podcast this week was getting coons with, was
Oh,
a half
yeah.
German Shepherd.
Have
that was the connection.
Yeah.
I
That
see.
I'm clever sometimes.
Pulling that out of the obscurity of the
Yeah.
podcast. We got a
Yeah.
real listener here.
Yeah. So I've been working pretty hard lately. I'm building a stone masonry fire pit.
I noticed it when I drove up today.
Did you see it?
It's looking solid.
I see what he did.
Yeah. It's
Looking
man.
solid.
It's so this will be the work of my life.
We call it the magnum opus, Clay's magnum
I
opus.
thought it was singing in front of people.
There's a lot for
Well,
Clay.
it's not
you know?
my magnum opus, but
Okay.
but the fire pit. So it's going to end up being probably about 14 foot tall.
Oh, it's
And
going to be that tall?
it's going to be tall
From the
Yeah.
ground.
Oh, cow.
It's like, yeah, it's going to be from the ground, not from the deck. So the deck is elevated,
right.
And it's basically a freestanding chimney, like fireplace. It is a hat tip. So if you were on my porch and I were telling you about it, I would say this is a work of art. This is a statue. This is a hat tip to listen up. The Ozark pioneers that came through here, because you can still, when you're riding out through the Ozarks in a lot of different places, you'll see these old chimneys. And I imagine they're all over the country. But where there used to be a house and like there's no evidence whatsoever of a house left. There's just this rock freestanding chimney just out in the middle of nowhere. So this is kind of a hat tip to that. It's a big freestanding chimney. But I used a fire block on the inside, so it's a legit just native field stone.
Yeah,
I gathered
if you've never been to the Ozarks, the Ozark grows rocks.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of the rocks here. They're everywhere.
Yeah, and I gathered all the rocks out of the creek, about a quarter-mile stretch of creek right in front of my house. And so it's probably going to have
fantastic.
about 10 ton of rock in it by the time it's done, I think. Just guess. But it wears your fingers down.
Yeah.
I can only work. There's only so much I can work before the skin gets all wore off in the ends of
Are
my
you wearing
fingers.
gloves?
Yeah, it's not that. It's the
the
lime
cement.
from the concrete. Just eats it, and then it is the sand and the mortar. But like, for 8 or 10 hours, however long you're working, it's just lime on your hands. But and if you don't do it every day, which I used to do it a lot more than I do now, if you don't do it every day, your hands are just like little kid hands. Yeah.
It's hard going from being a rock star to a rock layer.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, that's what I did. That's what I went from before, though, was from rock layer to rock star.
And
That's
then
full
back.
circle.
And then back.
You're
Yeah.
Full
digressing.
circle.
Colby, you just got back from Oregon.
Yeah.
How long were you up there?
I was up there, I think, about 10 days.
10 days.
Or was
Wow.
it 7? All right, we had some stuff we had to do on the front end, just like photography and stuff like that, and then moved into the bear hunt. They were seeing bears before I got there. I got there and it's like they disappeared. And then the day that I left, they started seeing them again.
You scared them. They knew you were coming.
Yeah, but it rained for a good solid like 5 days and heavy fog. It was hard to glass. You would come into a new unit and you just had to wait for it to clear or just move on to the next one. Like it was.
So you didn't even see a bear.
We ended up seeing 11, but none that we could really get on.
Yeah.
Oregon's such a dramatic landscape. Like,
Yeah.
it's so wild. And it's crazy too, like how guys that hunt there have adapted to their style. Like those guys are shooting bears like way out there, like much further than I would be comfortable doing. And it's just like normal to them.
Just shooting across canyons at 'em?
Yeah. And those guys, they really, like, you can even tell it inside of their gear. Like they're shooting these heavier, more like bull barreled, like where my gun would be, like a 7-pound gun. Like they'll have like a 14-pound gun, and they'll just haul it around, and like they're really dialed in for those longer shots.
Yeah.
What's a long shot for them?
I mean, I know a guy up there that shot one a couple weeks ago at 1,000.
Really?
Yeah. But he's a rarity. He's just, Brandon's a stud as far as that goes. But typically, like, they'll shoot them within like 600 or so, 700.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff I would have never dreamed of.
Yeah.
I shot out to 630 whenever we were just out shooting one day, and I felt pretty good about that.
Well, that's awesome.
Man, so Miss Newcomb, there's a controversy in the hunting world about long distance shooting. So the technology's increased so much, guys are now able to be pretty accurate out to long distances.
Yeah.
And used to, the game was getting close to animals. That's what was fun about hunting. And now some guys are on purpose staying out far. Like the measuring stick of what a unique hunt is like how far that you're shooting an animal. And there's, I could argue either side of it and have a strong argument for, if you're a good shooter and if you're practiced and, you can take a long shot, So the ethical side of it to me is you could go either way.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
Well, I've always thought that you should probably get as close as you can. It's probably the side I land on.
What's the longest shot you've taken on game, Misty?
I've taken one.
Deer? With a rifle?
Yep.
And we were pretty close.
About 65 yards.
And you just drilled it?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
basically.
Atta girl.
Yeah. What kind of gun are you shooting, Colby?
Me, I've got a Seekins Precision 7 PRC.
7 PRC.
Yeah. And those guys, like, I've learned a lot on this trip because when you shoot out that far, there's much more that comes into it of whether you're a good shot or not. Like, you also are looking at the round and how much energy it's carrying at different ranges. And the guy that made that long shot, he was even, like, he was using a Kestrel and checking the wind and the humidity. And, like, he was super dialed in. Yeah. But, I'm shooting that 7 PRC. It's just real flat and it's real fast round. It's kind of popularized. It's been newer, like, these last few years, become more commercial.
How accurate, how far would you shoot at a bear?
Well, I haven't had it that long, so I would say that I would keep it within. It depends if I had someone with me that really had experience because of windage. So, like, if it was calm, I would shoot further out, like maybe like 400 to 500.
Yeah.
If I had like 2 points of security, like where I had my bipod and had something on the back of the stock, I would shoot it a little further, out to about 5. If it was super calm. I think that would be where I would cap it off.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. But if I were shooting and there was wind, and I don't feel like I'm good at guessing what the wind's going to do to my round. I just haven't shot it enough. So I probably wouldn't go out past probably like 354. Yeah. With a slight wind.
I've been doing some longer range shooting, and it's there's an amazing science to it. I mean, just using ballistics calculators and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty amazing. And it's I mean, even from one ammo to the other, there can be huge differences.
Yeah.
Man, I think this is a pretty general statement that I think will hold true for a while, is that with archery equipment, 40 yards is a long shot.
Yeah.
Like when I'm shooting a lot, shooting good, I'm much more proficient with archery than I would be with rifles in terms of just hours in the field and shots fired.
Yeah.
I could be able to, let's say, ding in softballs at 60 yards, which I've never focused on long range shooting because I'm usually hunting in places where I'm killing animals inside of 20 yards. That's what I like.
Yeah.
But I don't care who you are. If you're the best shooter in the world, shooting 40 yards at an animal is a pretty long shot because there's so many unpredictable things that can happen with the animal.
Yeah.
And so, you ask me, well, how far would you shoot at an animal? And I would typically say max 40, but I want them inside of 30.
Yeah.
Any animal. Now, obviously, the Western hunters are shooting elk, which is a huge target that's 3 times as big as a whitetail. So you're going from needing to hit a volleyball-sized kill shot to a
paper grocery bag
to a beach ball-sized kill shot. And with a rifle, though, I think that number is like 400 yards. I've hunted with a lot of really good, proficient Western hunters.
Yeah.
Steve Rennella being one of them. And, I mean, he doesn't claim to be like some big long-range shooter, but, I mean, the guy's proficient with a rifle. So is Giannis Patelis, serious shooters. And I guess I could speak more for Steve than Giannis, but they're wanting them inside of 400 yards.
Yeah.
Like, you're wanting them inside of 400 yards.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I
Most
think you're right
people
on.
don't know how long of a shot that is. That's a long way.
That's a long shot.
Yeah, here looking at 200 yards, I'm like, what? And I just shot this other
You can't hardly see a white paper plate at 400 yards.
Yeah.
No.
I was trying to think of the longest shot I've ever made, and I honestly, I remember a 350-yard shot at a bear one time. That may be the longest shot I've ever made.
Good clean shot.
Yeah, In
what were
British
you
Columbia.
What were you shooting?
I was shooting the
300
best
Win Mag.
300 Win Mag, best of the West. With
Yeah.
the Husqvarna scope, had it all dialed in. And I mean, and that is a 1,000-yard gun. I mean, like they send it to you as a vetted 1,000-yard gun. And
What's the longest you shot on a target at? Like not an
1,000
animal?
yards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that video.
Yeah.
And it wasn't super. I didn't have a great. I was just shooting off the hood of a truck with like jackets and shirts and stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I
like the pros
dinged some iron at 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a couple
impressive.
shots.
Yeah.
It took a couple shots.
Yeah.
But Josh, so I'm shooting this Sig Cross 300 Win Mag right now. Josh has been shooting it for me
with a carbon barrel.
I want to see it.
Oh,
It's
dude,
pretty sweet.
It is. It's a sweet gun.
Yeah. It's got a 300 Win Mag and a 6.5 Creedmoor, and I get the 300 Win Mag. Like it's a powerful round, but that 6.5 Creedmoor is just a tack driver, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got a bear last year with a 6.5 Creedmoor in Oregon.
And
yeah,
did the job.
It did the job. Yeah, full pass through.
Really?
I've seen two. Okay, I like it. It did the job.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that a 6.5 Creedmoor will do the job on any bear. Tyler Friel, my friend Tyler Friel in Alaska killed a big grizzly with a 6.5.
Yeah,
really.
You kill a grizzly with a 22 mag. If you hit it in the right spot.
Yeah, there's an article about it. Yeah,
I have seen two bears get away that were shot with 6.5s.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
That I just feel like if it had been a 300 Win Mag, that it'd kill them.
I'm not picking a 6.5. Like I won't.
What do you think?
I want
Misty?
more hydro
I
shock.
agree.
You'd rather like a 7, 8, 9, 5?
I don't even think that those are the 5s that exist.
Montana Knife Company was founded by Josh Smith, one of the world's most experienced master bladesmiths. He's been making knives for 30 years. Made in the USA and manufactured locally in Montana. The knives come with a multi-generational warranty and free sharpening. Designed, tested, and built by hunters, MKC is a hunting knife company first and foremost. They have the sharpest knives out of the box and the easiest knives to sharpen. And that is the dadgum truth. You better be careful with them when you get them. They are sharp. MKC is a fast-growing company. They just hired their 55th employee and are looking to hire about 50 more in the next year or so. I've carried a lot of these Montana knives, and the one that I like the most is their Speed Goat, which is a lightweight hunting knife, just the right size. MKC knives sell out within minutes of being released, so head over to montanaknifecompany.com. They have new knives for sale every Thursday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, so check their website and sign up for their text and email alerts. That is the best way to find out when they have knives available. Use code BEARGREASE10 for 10% off your first order. Montana Knife Company, working knives for working people. I just got back from the Meat Eater Live tour, and one thing that I really missed? My Helix Sleep mattress. I've been sleeping on one of these bad boys for over 3 years, and I'm not joking. It's the best mattress that I've ever had, and it's way better than the bunk beds in the bus. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including their award-winning Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite collections, the Helix Plus, which is a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and the Helix Kids mattress. You can take the Helix Sleep Quiz and get matched with the model you want, soft, medium, firm. What side you sleep on, just tell them the details, and they'll match you up in under 2 minutes. And your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door free of charge. The setup is fast and easy. Helix mattresses all come with a 10 or 15-year warranty, depending on the model. Helix is offering up to 30% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows. For our listeners at Bear Grease, go to helixsleep.com/clay. That's helixsleep.com/clay. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. The old-timers say that the turkeys start gobbling when the leaves are as big as squirrels' ears and the red buds start popping. And we're about there, and we are there in the South. The Onyx Hunt app is one of my most valuable tools in the spring woods. With tools like coniferous versus deciduous tree distribution layer, you can save time by locating edges or transition areas of mixing habitats from home. Find an area like this with water in close proximity, and more than likely, there will be a gobbling turkey nearby. Knowing the exact boundaries of private ground ensures I stay on the right side of the fence, but can easily find public ground to go see if I can't strike a gobbler. If you do get one to sound off, using compass mode and waypoints will help you pinpoint his exact location, allowing you to move in and make the perfect setup to bring him right into your lap. Download the onX Hunt app today. You'll be glad you did. onX has a special offer for you. Use code BEARGREASE to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt this spring.
For a big boned animal, you're hoping to have a bigger cartridge.
Yeah.
Not to say we're taking that 6.5 when we go to Montana.
Yep.
Bear and I are going to Montana. We're taking a 6.5 and a 300 Win Mag, but my round is a 300 Win Mag.
Yeah.
For anything.
Yeah. Well,
Moose hunting, bear hunting, anything in the world.
There's definitely more room for error. Like, I mean, if you're a little
with the
forward.
6.5.
No, with the 300 Win Mag.
More room for error.
Yeah.
Just ballistics, weight, power.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Power.
You
like,
got more flexibility. Like
yeah,
I see what you're saying.
yeah. You have more grains. You got more mass, pushing that thing.
It's a big cartridge.
Yeah. And if you hit bone or something, it's if you have the right ammo, it'll go through it. Like, you can be a little less choosy with your shot
What do you
selection.
think, Misty?
I feel like we're kind of broing out here.
Well, yeah, I don't care.
I was just teeing you up.
Yeah.
I was just teeing you up.
And like there was no intelligent thought coming. You teed me up, and I was like, okay, now fill the void with words. And it was like, no, none coming to mind. This is just, we are outside my scope of expertise.
We're about to dabble into Misty's scope of expertise.
Misty's big time scope
my
of expertise.
actual scope of expertise. Yeah.
What do you see when you look through your scope?
When I look through my scope, I don't look through scope very often.
Colby, how's Bear Hunting Magazine going?
It's doing good. Just got a issue out earlier in the month, and gonna start building the next one next month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things are pretty solid. We're putting out a lot of stuff on social media. We're getting ready to launch a podcast. Just
exciting.
Yeah,
awesome.
Branching out more into the digital world.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I got that bear. Do you see that bear hanging in the middle there that has it's
buzz cut?
It's got the buzz cut. Yeah, it's got it had hair slippage up around the ears.
Oh, really?
I just got that back from the taxidermist after 3 years.
Oh, that's
maybe even 4 years.
Which bear was that?
That's the bear I killed in Montana. That was on the Meat Eater episode with Ranella, the turkey bear.
The year after we went. Yeah.
It had that bear had a big chunk out of its jaw.
Yeah.
You could see its teeth. Like if it was just standing there, you'd have been able to see its canine.
From what?
I'm sure just fighting.
Just fighting?
Just got its lip ripped off.
Interesting.
But yeah, man, I get so many bear hides or just have had a lot of exposure tanning bear hides.
Mm-hmm.
About every single possible scenario that a taxidermist can do that's wrong, I've had done wrong. From like this guy sold his business, and the new guy it took him years, but finally I got it. So hat tip to the new guy for making it work. I've had all the bad stuff happen, but anyway, I'm glad to get that
The fur
back.
looks
That's
good.
Montana.
Yeah,
it looks
pretty
good.
fur.
It looks good. It looks good. I like it.
Yeah. What do you think caused that slippage? Just, not taking the skull out.
It must have been. Yeah, it must have been just the way it was wadded up in a cooler on the way home, because I carried it home from Montana.
Mm-hmm.
Must have just been
put the head in on the inside instead of out, maybe. Or,
I mean, I don't remember doing that. I typically take pretty good care of them, wrapping them in ice and stuff. Because if you killed bear, Josh, a green hide, and you just wrapped it up, which is a good way to store them, is to like roll them. Man, the center part of that roll is now insulated by like layers and layers of fat and hair.
Right.
So it might be days before the middle of that hide freezes. So
what do you have to do?
Well, the ideal situation is if you have a green bear hide that you're going to freeze, is that you would kind of drop it into a big freezer, semi-unrolled for about an hour or two, and let the whole thing chill.
Okay.
And then roll it up.
While it's still soft enough to roll back
and
up.
then before it freezes hard, you roll it up.
How long can you keep a hide in the freezer before you have it tanned?
A long time. I mean, probably not indefinitely, but years.
Okay.
Years. Mm-hmm. I've never tested that particular thing because I've usually had them done pretty quick.
Okay.
But they take up a lot of space.
Well, that one clearly sat in the freezer for a while.
Well, I think it was stretched and salted for a while.
Okay.
I don't think it was in the freezer for real long.
Okay.
I think they worked on it, and then the business sold, and then
I see.
It just kind of was in this. Now, a salted hide will last for years.
Really?
Like if you dry and salt and flesh, what do you think, Misty? If you do that, it'll last almost indefinitely.
Okay.
Salted and dried. But bear hides.
I know that Clay
Love
likes to there's a section in our freezer for furs and hides, and I like to keep our freezer very organized. Very organized. And I have little containers and everything. And Clay likes to take my chicken feed bags and roll up hides and put them in there.
Yeah.
And I guess that's semi-organized. At least I know what's in there. And
you don't
Chicken
ever
feed
just accidentally
bags.
pull out a coon hide and cook it like a roast?
no, I've never done that.
Doggone it, Clay.
Shoot.
Yeah. But now you can sell the coon hides.
What do you mean? Well, I knew you could sell them before the podcast.
Yeah.
It's the coon meat. He was,
it's the coon
he
meat.
was
gotcha.
suspicious
Coon meat.
about.
Now, I knew you could sell the hides.
Yeah,
it
we
was
got
the
in that
meat.
car, and Clay got hit with a moral conundrum.
Yeah.
Thought we were all going to the
Clink.
pokey.
And we used to sell the meat when I was a kid to people Dad would work with.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sold a lot of coon meat.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's not bad.
You know, there's a lot of talk on this particular podcast about Clay being a hillbilly. I
Are
actually
you sure?
had
This one?
on all sorts of podcasts. America's Favorite Hillbilly.
Oh, I thought you were talking about this Gillette Coon
no,
song.
no,
Not the
not the
episode, just
Gillette.
the
Yeah, like in
Podcast in
yeah.
general.
And I was actually, my people actually were hillbillies, and they're the kind of people who wouldn't like to be called that. That's why I hesitate to even say it, because one time I said that, kind of meaning it as a term of endearment, and I could tell by everyone's face it was like, don't bring that in
Like
here.
record scratch.
Yeah, not interested in that. And at Thanksgiving, my dad was like a real finicky eater. And before Thanksgiving, he would say, hey, why don't y'all eat something here? He's going to say, he was talking about his grandpa, who was my great-grandpa, and he would say, he's going to ask you to guess what's in the dressing. And it could be possum, it could be coon. And I'm not into that. Like, I'm not, and I don't want y'all to have to eat that either. And the way they cook their dressing, I mean, I'm not convinced there wasn't possum or coon in there. There was
Mystery
always
meat
something
dressing?
mystery. Yeah, there's some mystery treasure in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they really, and I took the kids to see my aunt, not my great aunt, not too long ago. And I just wanted them to hear, because they were really fun people and really colorful. And I wanted them to hear some of the stories. And I told her that. I said, were they really serving us possum and coon meat? Like, is that something that I've partaken in a lot, just kind of casually,
And didn't know it.
and didn't know it. And she said, "Well, we did." I mean, she was honest. She said, "We did." She said, "I've only had skunk once." She kind of went through I mean, they grew up during the Great Depression. And they traveled. They were migrant farmers. They traveled all over to make ends meet. And she told me different stories about when they would kill things, and he'd bring it back to the camp with all the people who were traveling and working in the timber, different areas. And both sides of my family, they did that. They traveled so that they could. I'm trying to think. Was my mom born in Wyoming, or did they just? That was where she was raised her early years, because her dad would go
I'm
up
not
there.
sure where she was born.
Yeah, they would go log up there. That's why they would travel. So they were loggers on both
Okay.
sides of the family, and then they'd take their kids out of school early on my mom's side.
So Misty's grandfather's, great-grandfather
He was my great grandpa.
was named Louis Joplin. And I
Incredible
just barely, my time with Misty just barely overlapped. And so I knew Louis Joplin. I think he died when he was 89 in about 2001 or 2.
He lived to see our oldest, and his wife lived to see our oldest 2 kids.
Right. And Louis Joplin, he lived in Hatfield, Arkansas. And there was a family story about him killing a bear with a rock. And so I asked him about it one day.
And let me just say, he was kind of this Paul Bunyan type of guy. I would tell people who my great-grandpa was, and they would say, oh, Louis Joplin, strongest man I ever knew. One time I saw him catch a whole diesel truck of logs on his bare back. And I'd be like, are you sure? But like every story had a little bit of truth in it.
Yeah, he was a big guy, and really he was a logger his whole life. And they did some migrant farm work. They would travel around to different places and. Well, that was your other side.
They did both.
A lot of people, almost everybody that was in Arkansas, specifically Western Arkansas, in the 30s and 40s, left to work.
Yeah.
To live.
Gary Newcomb. Gary Newcomb was not born in Arkansas. He was born in California. And now, because his family left to go get work, they were in California 2 years and then ended up coming back. Now, I still claim that. And I don't claim, it's the truth. I'm a 7th generation Arkansan. Gary Newcomb's not a Californian. He was born in California. My mother was born in Minot, North Dakota. Her family had been in Arkansas in Oklahoma for generations. He was my grandfather when my mother was born in the early 1950s. Was doing. Working for the civil service, is that what it is?
Yeah, CCC. Mm-hmm.
It's the Civilian Conservation Corps.
He was working for them as a bricklayer.
Oh, interesting.
And they just toured around the country. And so he took his wife, my grandmother, Natalie Millsap, and so my mother, their family lived out of Arkansas for just like this short period of time, but it was when she was born.
When you watch the documentaries, it's usually single men traveling, but when you hear the stories of
they took their wives. Yeah. So Louis Joplin killed a bear with a rock. So I feel really fortunate that I
Did you asked him about the story?
I did, and he told me. He said that he was a young boy. I got the feeling he was like, between 12 and 13, 14, something like that. Mm-hmm. And he was walking down a gravel road in Polk County, Arkansas. And we've tried to nail down the time frame. Mm-hmm. It would have been sometime probably in the 1920s. And he saw a small bear cub cross the road. And this was the time when bears were supposed to be extirpated out of western Arkansas. Mm-hmm. If you look in the textbooks today, they will in the scientific literature, it'll say bears were extirpated out of western Arkansas during the basically from the 1900s till the reintroduction in the 1950s. There was this big gap of no bears.
Yeah.
Well, Louis Joplin killed one with a rock in the 1920s. He said he saw a small bear, and I don't know how big it was, but I get the feeling it was a 40, 50-pound bear. Mm. And he said it ran up a little bitty tree right by the road. And what did he do? Started chunking rocks at it. He's just a kid, and he ends up chunking a rock and just kills this bear. Falls out of the tree, and then he's scared to death because he thought he was going to be in trouble. And so he never told anybody about it for a long time.
Oh, funny.
And then later in his life, he's like, I killed a bear once with a rock.
And so when people would find out, they'd say, I saw him catch, a whole load of logs on he killed a bear with his bare hands. I mean, these are the stories I grew up with. And he was just the sweetest, kindest, simple man, but he was a really good man, a good servant of the community, very extremely giving and generous. And, So T.L. Jones, we did the podcast with him about plot hounds and Barry Tarleton, the moonshine sheriff, and plot man. And, he talked about possum poverty, about how they would, and those guys would have been in the same generation, Louis Joplin and Barry Tarleton would have been in the ballpark. Well, actually, Louis Joplin would have been older than Barry. But he said they would fatten up a possum in a cage. They'd catch a possum, they would catch it, fatten it up in a cage until it was gained some weight, and then dress it, kill it, eat it. Mm-hmm. But Gillette Coon Supper, the way that I think about the work that we do here at Bear Grease, I always have a kind of like a journalist meter. Okay.
Regardless of whether the podcast is well received or because there's all these variations in stories. I mean, like the Donnie Baker story was just exciting and dramatic and personal
and moving.
And so it was a very dynamic story. some stories are not as dynamic, but they're meaningful in different ways. I feel like this is one of them. But on the journalism meter, I felt like we did a good job of telling this story. And then Tim Carney was a incredible guest and expert on social capital. And now, Misty, tell us about your research.
Oh, well, social capital, the reason that we knew about Tim Carney, fun fact, let's tie this into bear hunting.
Okay.
During one of your most recent bear seasons, I went up into a bear stand where they just had an extra stand, and they said, you ought to take a gun up there, and if a bear comes to it, you can hunt too. So I had a license, so I set up in there, and I read Tim Carney's book because I was writing my dissertation.
Did you really?
I did. I read it
you
up
read
there.
Tim Carney's book in a bear stand.
In a bear stand, Alienated America. Read it and so when because that was part of that was one of the most enjoyable parts of my dissertation, because most of the things I read were just like scientific studies about social capital, which isn't as interesting.
And your dissertation is on social.
Yeah, my dissertation was on educational outcomes and social capital, and whether or not, because it's kind of an interesting topic. You know, in a community, there's this one big study that's been done, and it looks at like what are some of the factors, social capital related factors that improve outcomes for children, which is something that I was super interested in. And they found that whether your own parents stayed married or not, being in a community where there's a lot of two-parent families was more predictive of your later life outcomes than even your own parents' marriage. And it really speaks to the value of the context that you're raised in, and the challenges if you're not in a community that has a lot of social capital. And so I was really interested in his book because he kind of delved into some of that, and he looked at it from a more political standpoint. I was interested in what happens to academic achievement. Like do kids perform better in school? Do they learn more? Because
if what?
If there's a social if there's a strong social.
Now, tell us what social capital is. Like, give us a review.
People just listen to your podcast, but I mean, social capital is, Tim Carney described it as like reciprocity, and I don't really want to describe social capital because
he described it as
describe it.
Things that have value in your life that you couldn't buy or sell. And typically they are the value is found in relationships. Mm-hmm. So he talked about like if you have a best friend that you often call upon to help you, or if you sent your kids over to your neighbor's house, which is such a northern thing to say, to shovel snow.
Yeah.
Well, we would say, and it's trust. I think that's one of the challenges of defining something that you've spent so much time. It's really hard to take it into, just like a 2-sentence.
Right.
I had to write pages on what social capital was.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things, it's not just the relationships, but it's the outcomes of those relationships. So you have trust in a community. He talked about reciprocity and the sense that if you need something, there will be people there for you as well.
Right.
And I think that's really powerful. And so I was looking at Arkansas, and Arkansas has people sometimes, meanies, make fun of us, and
haters,
and we aren't known for having really high academic outcomes, and we've got there's a lot of challenges in a state like Arkansas that people don't really necessarily understand. And one of the things, I grew up here. I grew up in one of the poor parts of Arkansas in the southern part of the state, and I saw things in my own life. I had a really strong community around me, and even inside of like our church context, there was just a group of us, and we all went to college, and that wasn't something that really normally happened. And I was just curious, like, are there things about your community that can kind of almost invisibly help you overcome some of the challenges in your context? I didn't know I grew up in a tough context until I started. So
someone told you?
Until I was told repeatedly when I started working in education policy.
Like Warner Glenn, nobody ever told him this life he chose was what's the
hard
song?
road to hoe.
Hard road to hoe.
Yeah.
This wretched life was a hard road to hoe.
Yeah, I remember.
Ballad of Warner Glenn.
Thanks for bringing it back to. Yeah, that's good, Clay.
Go ahead. Burritos are ready.
But yeah, I didn't know. I remember telling people, they'd say, "Where are you from?" And I would tell them, and they'd be like, "No, really, where are you from?" And one time, one guy said, I was at a big conference, and I told him where I was from, and he said, "How do you explain explain that. And I said, what do you mean? He said, like, how do you explain how you overcame that? And I was like, what a horrible thing to say to a person. I didn't realize I overcame anything.
These were these academics that had moved in here from other places.
No, these were education leaders in the state.
Where were they from?
Mina. In that particular case, I think the guy was actually from Mina, which is like 20 minutes north of Hatfield. So that's
like
kind of funny.
5,000
It's
people.
like hilarious that he said that. But yeah, they were people in Central Arkansas that was called all the shots. So what I looked at in my research was, there's this index, this social capital index that's kind of divided up into 4 different sections. And I had education data, I had education spending, I had wealth, per capita inside of each different county. And we took all these different data sets and said, does a social capital index basically predict academic achievement? And we were looking at younger kids. So we weren't just looking, do you go to college, but does it actually predict your performance in school? And So
you were grading communities based upon...
Someone else had already graded them. Someone else had used all these different factors to create this index, and I took their index, and
But that index was...
And it had 4 parts to it. It had nonprofits, like
how many nonprofits
how many
are in your
civic
town?
Organizations. It had religious participation. It had...
How many people are attending a church in the area?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
And then it had voting records for presidential elections, because that's
how many people are engaging in the vote.
And that was one of the things that they talked a lot about in your podcast, was civic engagement. And then there was one more thing, and it was super fascinating, because when we ran the first test, and I was expecting, like you would, that social capital there'd be a correlation between academic achievement and social capital. And it was or that there'd be nothing, that there would not be, like there would just be no impact whatsoever. But there was an impact, and it was negative. So the more social capital, that according to this index, as measured by this index, the worse the education outcomes. And that, very counterintuitive. And that was where I was like, that is shocking to me. And so I have worked in the state, in pretty in depth for a while. I've been involved in education in Arkansas for, 2008, 2009. And so I just started looking at places I knew. And this is terrible scientific research. This is not what you're supposed to do. So anyone listening, that's not really the way you're supposed to do it. But I was like, that doesn't make sense. And I saw some of the places, and I had a suspicion. I already thought, I think this index is flawed. I think this nonprofit thing, and that's what I saw, is that basically the nonprofit part of this index. So let me just cut to the chase. I started to take I had the breakdown of the index, and I could look and compare each part of it. And basically, the more nonprofits in your community, the worse your social capital. And that does make a little bit of sense to me, because why would you have, a soup kitchen if there weren't people that were hungry? Mm-hmm. That made a little bit of sense to me. And it's not saying that nonprofit work is not valuable. It's just saying you probably need those kind of agencies. But it turned out to be the thing that was the most significant predictor in every single subject was voting records. And there was some suspicion.
So the more people that voted, the better the academic outcomes.
I mean, and it was huge.
Interesting.
So that would have been a correlation that could have been all over the country.
Yeah, I just looked at Arkansas. I just looked at the state of Arkansas, because I had really good data, really specific data for academic achievement and for school spending. And that was one of the suggestions, was that maybe because often voting is correlated with income. Let me just say that we did run some tests to make sure that wasn't just like a proxy for wealth. And we kind of eliminated that. What I think it showed was just the value of civic engagement in a community. When there are enough people who feel like their vote matters, because, I mean, really, if you look at all the people that vote, and you could argue that one single vote doesn't matter. But if there's enough people in a community that go out there and engage in the practice, engage in the ritual, engage in the tradition, I think it says something about your community.
People think that they have a say in the game, and they're invested in their community, and they're voting. I think that means a lot.
Yeah, I think if you feel like you can, I think there's 2 ways to read that. One is if people feel like their voice makes a difference, and that's why they get out and vote. That matters. And I think the other way of seeing is even if my individual vote doesn't make a difference, I'm part of a practice or I'm part of a ritual that makes a difference.
Yeah.
I think that matters. And I think that communicates unseen things to the kids in your community.
I think that was highly visible in this podcast, talking to these people that were in attendance at this event, that it wasn't just an excuse to get together. It wasn't just a fundraiser for the high school students.
Yeah.
The tradition of it was almost like a sacred thing to them. Mm-hmm. And it gave them an identity. And even people beyond just the citizens of the town, anyone who had touched it or been involved with it, they felt like it was theirs and they felt like it was important. Yeah. And really, I mean, it is kind of a hotbed of political attendees in that place.
Yeah. Were y'all surprised to hear Bill Clinton on there?
I wasn't surprised at all.
I didn't know that you knew Bill Clinton and you could get him on the podcast.
Yeah.
Which of you listening right now took a class in school about Family Finances 101? No one? Yeah, me neither. Like the importance of a will or college savings plan or even life insurance or estate planning. We have to know these things. But how do we figure it all out? That's why I'm excited to partner with Fabric by Gerber Life. Life insurance is important to me. It just gives me security in knowing that if anything happened to me, my family would remain financially stable in my absence. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance you can get done right here, right now. You can be covered from your couch in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/bear. That's meetfabric.com/bear. MEET, fabric.com/bear. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Montana Knife Company was founded by Josh Smith, one of the world's most experienced master bladesmiths. He's been making knives for 30 years. Made in the USA and manufactured locally in Montana. The knives come with a multi-generational warranty and free sharpening. Designed, tested, and built by hunters, MKC is a hunting knife company first and foremost. They have the sharpest knives out of the box and the easiest knives to sharpen. And that is the dadgum truth. You better be careful with them when you get them. They are sharp. MKC is a fast-growing company. They just hired their 55th employee and are looking to hire about 50 more in the next year or so. I've carried a lot of these Montana knives, and the one that I like the most is their Speed Goat, which is a lightweight hunting knife, just the right size. MKC knives sell out within minutes of being released, so head over to montanaknifecompany.com. They have new knives for sale every Thursday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, so check their website and sign up for their text and email alerts. That is the best way to find out when they have knives available. Use code BEARGREASE10 for 10% off your first order. Montana Knife Company, working knives for working people. The old-timers say that the turkeys start gobbling when the leaves are as big as squirrels' ears and the red buds start popping. And we're about there. And we are there in the South. The onX Hunt app is one of my most valuable tools in the spring woods. With tools like coniferous versus deciduous tree distribution layer, you can save time by locating edges or transition areas of mixing habitats from home. Find an area like this with water in close proximity, and more than likely, there will be a gobbling turkey nearby. Knowing the exact boundaries of private ground ensures I stay on the right side of the fence, but can easily find public ground to go see if I can't strike a gobbler. If you do get one to sound off, using compass mode and waypoints will help you pinpoint his exact location, allowing you to move in and make the perfect setup to bring him right into your lap. Download the onX Hunt app today. You'll be glad you did. onX has a special offer for you. Use code BEARGREASE to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt this spring.
No, I think that's actually was part of Clinton's political genius, is that he was, you know, one of us. That was part of he
engaged people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He really engaged people.
Mm-hmm.
And, regardless of your opinion on his politics, people always talk about his charisma and engagement of the person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so
I wish so bad Brent was here. Brent's in Canada. Brent was a officer at the state capitol. He wasn't necessarily there when Clinton was in governor of Arkansas, but in Brent's, I'm pretty sure Brent was at the state capitol when Clinton was president, though.
Okay.
And so Clinton would come back here, and Brent had some interaction with the Clinton presidency.
Yeah.
Just from a law enforcement standpoint at the Capitol.
We should have had him phone in from the bear stand.
Yeah.
I think
Actually, I'm going to text him right now. Yup. Keep going.
Well, one of the things, when I was at the Coon Supper, there were two things that I thought were really interesting about it. I sat across from a very old man. We actually tried to record him talking to me, but his voice was so in that loud room, you just couldn't pick up his voice on the thing. But he was there with his son and his grandson, and they were from Central Arkansas. They were from Little Rock, the big town. Yeah. They had long hair, had it tied up, and then there was Grandpa, and he said, "I've maybe missed one." Since my childhood. And it was really sweet because and I asked the grandson, who is probably, a freshman in high school, I said, "Did you eat some of this coon?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Is this your first Coon Supper?" And he said, "No, we come with them." And it was like this tradition that their family, he was from that area. They had all moved to Little Rock, but they still came back for the Coon Supper. And then I saw those high school kids up there, and there was a girl that was like missed something down there, and she came up and she said, "I was part of the last elementary class, and that went through the school." Uh-huh. And as they called the kid's name out, I just thought what a powerful experience that was for all those kids in there. As they shared what they were going to do, and everybody applauded for them, because it's just saying, well, you've got a place that you come home to, and that's a really important thing to have in life, is people who know you, people who cheer for you, people who recognize when you graduate and acknowledge it. And there's so much anonymity in the world today. There's so much. It's so easy. I mean, I go to these big graduations up here where, I don't know, there's probably 1,000 kids that graduate, and there's no real sense of even the students know each other, you know? Right. And so to get up there and to sit down and have everybody cheer and hear your plans for the future, whether you do them or not, but to just know I've got a place I can come back to. I can bring my kids back if I move away from here. And that's to me what's really important about places, things like the Coon Supper. And I think it's a real tragedy that they've shut down those schools in that town. I don't think it's produced necessarily any good academic benefits, and I think it has stripped one of the few symbols that they had left of community.
What about the school consolidation? We didn't get into it. I just didn't feel like I had the info. But several years ago, they were, and it's happening all over the country, where these small rural schools are being consolidated with bigger schools, and they were doing that in part financially. Is that not true?
I mean, I think that's part of the justification for it.
But it's, you told me that it has absolutely been negative for children outcomes.
Well, I told you of some studies that were not published that I saw that showed that when they consolidated, it was bad for the kids that got the schools they went into, and it was bad for the kids who went in.
Why didn't they publish those studies?
It's a conspiracy.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of, and maybe they have now. That was like,
maybe we need to put a Bear Grease podcast on
this. Maybe so. That was like 20 years ago.
Bear Grease expose.
Why didn't you publish the study on why the kids didn't do good when you consolidate their school?
And it's been a while since I've worked in a shop that just looks at data. So maybe they've published those studies since. But that was the initial findings. And the other part of it, and they talked, the guy you interviewed, he kind of alluded to this in these situations. Oh, it was
Gillette's top politician, Randy Womack.
Yeah. The way he talked about the tensions, tensions were running high. in addition to just shutting down the school, they didn't take the central, the central government that shut down the schools in Little Rock didn't take any initiative to create a plan for what that would look like. And they left it up to the communities.
Oh, wow.
Well, the communities couldn't decide. I mean, there were people who wanted to consolidate with this school or do this.
Yeah.
And there was no blueprint. And so the process of consolidation was really difficult on community school boards. It actually was, to me, growing up in Arkansas in a very tiny school where every couple years the principal would come in and tell us, you guys, we need your parents to call the state politicians. That happened every couple years to us. They're gonna try to shut schools down this year, and there's a law, and we need you to call your politicians, or else they're gonna close Hatfield down, and Hatfield's gonna be just like Gillum, which was a school when they were all
those hillbillies at Gillum.
Yeah, well, it kind of toward the town was just a drive-through. It was just a place you drove through, just a speed trap, and so we were always going home and telling our parents, hey, they're going to close down our school if you don't call the state legislators. And so that's kind of how I grew up. But it was just such a tragedy because you lose these things, these schools and these symbols of community in your area. But the way it was done was also tragic because it turned people against each other in the process. There was it just was very unstrategic. And it's kind of, it actually tore at the actual the relationships that did exist at that time. So it tore it in a couple different ways. It was poorly done, in my opinion.
So Juju taught for decades at a school called Acorn School.
You mean Acorn?
Nope. Acorn School. And that was a school system. And that school system no longer exists. Now, kids still use those school buildings.
Mm-hmm.
What are they using for?
Well, they still have a school there. It's just not Acorn School.
They administratively consolidated. So what they did is they administered, and I thought that, again,
that was good.
The people who consolidated later kind of learned from the people who consolidated. My school was in the first round of schools to be consolidated. And so there was no real blueprint for...
Did they shut down your school?
I mean, it's empty. I drove Shepherd by it last week when we were...
So there's no Hatfield Public School?
No, there's no... The building clearly has been empty for a while. Now, the gym still operates, and they have community events in the gym. But, yeah, it was kind of sad that I haven't driven that way in a while. But
so, for all these people out there that have never been here, we're naming all these specific town names. I think this is relevant to a wider picture of what's going on in rural America across the country.
Yep.
And in the Northeast, there's a lot of really small schools that have maybe 43 people in it. In the North, they have not consolidated.
Is that right?
It's true. Yeah, You have friends who have kids in schools with less than 100 people in it. I could tell you names. Yeah.
Whole
Which
schools?
friends? I'm just kidding. You don't tell me.
Whole schools. With less than 100.
Absolutely.
Now, what was their justification? Why did they not consolidate it and we did?
I know that the governor that we had in place at the time, it was kind of his thing. He just felt like kids were not getting good opportunities and I think that's what I hear a lot is people assume that going to a bigger school means better opportunities. And I'll give you this. I would have loved to have had access to AP classes. Like my kids have access to AP classes and I see what they learn in high school.
Does AP mean American Panther?
No, it means advanced placement. But they're just really, really incredible. They're rigorous but very incredible, it's a great curriculum and good instructional challenge for kids. And I would have loved to have been challenged like that in high school. And those classes weren't afforded to me. But I feel like going to a small school, because we had less than 200 people, K-12. And you were a cheerleader. You played in the band when you could have a band. You couldn't always have a band. And that's one of the arguments pro consolidation is, but you were a cheerleader. You played in the band. You played basketball. You did public speaking, and I felt like it gave me so many opportunities for leadership.
I see what you're saying.
Because there was, if we didn't play basketball, I mean, if not all of us won't play, then we can't play. And so
there's
the
a lot
whole
of pressure
big fish,
to play.
little pond thing, too.
Yeah, it's true. And I feel like, we moved to a big town and I've done just fine. But I see other kids who are in these really huge schools and they can't find a place. They can't.
Think about sports too. Like if you
have to be an elite athlete to be in these big schools.
If you're in one of these big high schools that has graduating 600-700 kids, you basically got to be about a Division I athlete to play basketball.
Yeah. And so I think
Which would be no problem for me.
I don't know many areas in life where you grow up and there's just 2,000 people around you all the time.
Yeah.
Like if you think about most workplaces, even in big cities, you're working with 50 people max. Right. And so I don't feel like a big school system really prepares you. I mean, prisons might have a whole lot of people in them. And,
wow.
That escalated quickly.
I'm just saying, like, where we think about the places where we just herd people together in mass, with schools, prisons.
The Coon Supper. 800 people. The town only has 500 in it.
NCAA basketball games.
That's right.
I mean, those are the types of places. There's not. I don't feel like we spend a whole lot of our life in just gigantic context, with thousands of people surrounding us. So why would we assume that would be better for children who actually benefit from very close relational?
When I'm governor,
orbits?
Deep thoughts.
What could you could be the what?
The
Secretary of
Education is what you're thinking, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, when I'm governor, you could be a great game and fish director, Clay.
I don't want to
like
I'm out.
the entertainer statesman.
Yeah. When you're governor, I'll just go on the road.
You'll just go on the road.
First husband.
Take the music. I've got 5 ballads already
You got
written.
5 ballads already written up.
Yeah.
You're ready to roll.
I mean, that's like a 30-minute show.
Your first album is going to be called Ballad of a Ballad.
Ballad of a ballad.
I like it.
The ballad.
Well, I really enjoyed that Coon Supper podcast.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Seth Place, and that guy is a riot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's quite a character. I remember we were talking about the school consolidation. I remember him saying it was awful. It was terrible. Tore our town apart. But he told some great stories when I was talking to him about early Coon Suppers, and because it's like a week long for those guys that cook.
Yeah.
It's like a week-long ordeal,
wow.
them preparing this coon. It's something.
Are you going to go next year?
Definitely. I'm definitely going.
Yeah.
I'm going till I die from now on.
Yeah.
But apparently late at night there, it gets a little rowdy. There's
rowdy.
They have some
post-Coon Supper shenanigans?
No. While they're cooking during the week.
Oh, okay.
They play cards back there, and they shoot some craps, and in the evening. So,
Colby, what stood out to you? What was your favorite part of it?
Well, I just want there to be a shirt with a coon on it that just says "All Prime, All Prime, All Prime."
All Prime cuts. That was good when he said that.
Yeah. No, I like the whole community aspect, and in the beginning. He was talking about how back in the day, and it might even still be that way, that you couldn't even find a babysitter, to go to that thing. And I was like, I think that put my mind into a space to where it was just, I just saw like families and stuff inside of that. And I think from like a journalistic standpoint, I think that was one of the coolest things that produced imagery inside of my head to where I feel like I could kind of like see what it might be like, just that whole community engagement. Yeah. And I like the fact that it continued on even though that school doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and just like how some things, I actually thought about whenever you got this painting, how it's like there's some things that just don't exist, but, could still be celebrated through time, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like that community stepped up when some of the symbols stepped away. That community had, the advantage they had is that they had something else in there to stand in the gap, and I think we're in a season in the U.S. where a lot of those community symbols have been eroded. I mean, it's not like they're being eroded; they have been eroded.
Yeah, and
it's important to have something that says you got some place to come home to.
I had a thought about. You remember in the podcast when Tim Carney talked about how civic engagement has been going downhill since the 1960s.
Yep.
And it's kind of at rock bottom right now. And it really was almost a surreal moment when I realized that my dad was a young man, an aspiring young man in the 1960s. And he was involved in everything. He really was. Like Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, deacon at the church, all this stuff. And I said it on the podcast, but, he always wanted us to, like, do more stuff, and we kind of didn't want to.
You were a huge disappointment.
Well, I was at times, and I was kind of just a product of my generation. But what I felt, the application, I think, to the broader hunting community and where we're at inside of standing in a way, an ideological battle on a lot of different fronts, not just with anti-hunters, but with the way state game agencies are run, with firearms stuff. Like, there's all these things that are kind of tearing at they're eroding the foundation of really the North American model of wildlife conservation. A lot of different ways. I think that a key play for the hunting community would be to be a very engaged community inside the hunting space. So, like, in the hunting space, be civically engaged, because there's all these great organizations that are, and I mean, I could just go through and start naming all these incredible organizations that are doing a ton of incredible work. And some of their biggest challenges are getting people just to join them, just to be participants. And I would imagine that our user base is pretty active compared to a lot of user bases in terms of people being engaged. But, like, what if the hunting community was able to exponentially increase our power, cultural power in this space, just because if the average person in the United States is maybe a member of one club or actively involved in one thing, what if most of us were involved in two? You see what I'm saying? Like, what if we were given money, given time, given effort to, because I mean, that's the way I feel about, there are so many things that I would love to give myself to, that it's like you just like pick and choose. And sometimes there's so many you kind of get frozen of who to help.
Yeah. And I think and Tim Carney talked about this, I think he talked about it in the podcast, but it's also a lot in the literature that a lot of people are happy to give money right now, but don't want to put in the time and don't want to do. And I think the more local you can bring that stuff, the better it is. The more you can bring it into your local community. I mean, I think the Arkansas BHA has done a great job of doing that very locally, putting their volunteer work to help local the people in this state. And that's a great example of people who've done something like that. And that has it's something that the kids can see. It's something that has a visible impact on your community. So valuable. So very valuable.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks a ton. I'm going tomorrow to pick up Banjo from the Amish mule trainer.
Bittersweet.
From reform school.
Well, no, he's doing good. This was like, he wasn't going there to get reformed. He was going there just to get ridden, just while I was gone. And then I'm delivering him to my buddy up in Wyoming.
Are you sad to see him go?
Well, I really enjoy riding him. Probably better than Izzy.
Misty Newcomb is very sad to see him
go.
As the person who feeds those mules. I think Banjo is just, if a mule had personality, Banjo would have the best of the mules that we've had. That he's
been your favorite.
He does. He comes in, like, when I walk out there, he comes and visits me. He comes. I feel like he
cares about you.
He's a very personable mule, more so than the others. And
Misty's prone to anthropomorphication.
And I'm fine with that.
Anthropomorphize.
Like the Izzy is kind of a pistol. Like, you go to feed her and there's no thank you on that food. It's like, it's about time. That's kind of the attitude. And sometimes when I'm late, like in the summertime when I can sleep in a little bit, I'll come on the porch and just be enjoying the beauty of our, front porch and our front yard. And I'll look over there and there's Izzy.
And she's like, hello.
Oh, she's literally huffing. Like, she's huffing at me, like, get out here and feed me. And Banjo, he never does that kind of nonsense. He just kind of is like,
he's more respectful.
Thanks for enjoying. I'll just wait for you. But he's a good mule, so it's a big win. But Banjo is the funds from Banjo are going to cover something very very special for us, and he's gonna pay for our daughter's wedding.
True story.
Wow, translating equine animals into life covenants.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Someone should
we
write a book on that.
We basically
Forget
told our
social
daughter.
Capital.
We said, I told her what I projected to get for this mule, and I said,
that's your budget.
It's all yours.
That's your budget.
Yeah.
You can have the wedding you want, or you can use it to do whatever you.
Did
you know.
you offer her banjo? Just like she could get
That
have
was a good
wedding,
question.
or just give her
I should have just
banjo?
offered her the mule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She could have made a living off that mule.
The
Maybe.
dowry.
He's already got another mule he's training, and we just let the other daughter know this one's yours. So we're just kind of going through the line. Now that Bear's graduated, we should probably.
She should probably find a guy first.
Yeah, she should. True story.
She's got what, like 30 years?
Yeah, a good mule will last a while.
It'll take me the way that my entry point into the high end mule world. It takes me about 5 years to get one where I want it. Sell them at their peak.
Yeah.
Right as they start going into their peak.
Yeah.
Which is banjo, 100%. He's
Teach her about
he's
economics.
coming on 6 years old. So banjo's 5.
Yeah.
He's coming on 6.
Are you ever going to get rid of Izzy?
No.
She's a family member.
Yeah.
Kind of a family member with an attitude.
She's a very moody family member.
Well, but Izzy, yeah. See, Misty's cueing in on things that I don't care about at all.
Well, I think he likes his mules flashy, and he likes them,
sassy.
full of
Flashy and sassy.
flashy and sassy, full of spitfire.
Well, Izzy has been ridden literally thousands of miles in the backcountry. I mean, there was a time when I kind of kept track of miles ridden on her.
Right.
And I mean, it's.
Can you write that off as an IRS deduction?
like
what's a mileage
What's
rate?
a
What's a
mule
mileage rate on a mule?
rate?
And she's never done anything crazy. Not a single thing crazy, which is really saying something.
Was
I mean,
Ellie
I'm not.
Mae that ran down the hill with River?
Well, okay, Josh, you just brought up something that's not
Cut
even
this out of the
relevant.
podcast.
That's
Cut
not
this out of
even
the podcast.
relevant. That was Izzy, but
Okay.
that wasn't
That was
Izzy's
River's
fault.
fault.
That wasn't it. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
Cut that out of the podcast.
Well,
We
no,
don't need to blame the victim here.
but no, it's when you just have long exposure on an animal and nothing goes wrong, like
That's
creek
valuable.
crossings, walking along cliffs, having birds jump up in front of you, deer, bicycles, cars, bear hides.
We went turkey hunting and we took Banjo,
yeah.
and he had an area where he was reluctant. I'm just going to say reluctant to go over this hill.
Yeah.
Would Izzy have gone over that hill?
I mean, you're gonna always, yeah, she would have.
Okay.
And would
Yeah.
Banjo go over it now?
Yeah, I think he
I
would.
think he would. It wasn't
Any animal,
he wouldn't
animal,
like the-
especially a younger
Yeah.
one, is going to get in a bind where they don't think they can get out. And it was a unique place where there
Yeah.
was tight trees, dark water, and big rocks. And I was having trouble getting him to just kind of do something he was uncertain of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He eventually did it. Just took a little coaxing.
yeah, it took a little coaxing. But yeah, so Banjo will no longer be on Newcomb Farm. I wish him the best. I wish him
Yeah.
only the best.
I wish him the best too. I think Banjo, I like Banjo too because Bear was a part of that. And Bear, we got Banjo with those long legs and that blonde hair about the same time that Bear was kind of shooting up and being
Long
like
legs and
long
long
and
hair.
skinny and that blonde hair. They kind of reminded me of each other.
Yeah. Man, Bear got him broken where he'd lead really well.
Yeah, Bear helped me a little bit.
Bear worked
you know?
on that mule.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Maui Nui is on a mission to help balance axis deer populations for the good of our environment, communities, and food systems on the island of Maui. They've shared over 126,000 pounds of nutrient-dense protein with the Maui community. Secure your spot now. Become a snack subscriber and join in helping to build more resilient food and ecosystems on Maui. Visit MauiNuiVenison.com. That's MAUINUI venison.com and use promo code BEAR for 20% off your first order. This show is sponsored in part by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we've already done right. Maybe you finally organized one part of your space and you want to tackle another. Or maybe you're taking your supplements every morning and now you actually want to eat breakfast. In the last year, I've been more diligent about going to the gym on a regimented schedule, and it's made a lot of difference in my life. Therapy helps you find your strengths so that you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/Grease today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/Grease.